Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine-chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hi everyone, I am recording this on January 1st, 2025. Now, I'm recording this and I have not released my Patreon yet at this time, but this is going to be kind of a different episode because I actually wrote this episode for the old podcast that I used to do. Now, I no longer do that podcast. It just wasn't something that I could really sink my passion into. I really wanted it to work out, but it just wasn't right for me. So that's why I'm now doing Morbid Outdoors. So I hope that whenever you're listening to this, this is not too messed up for you. But basically, I wrote this almost a whole year ago, and it's about Ted Bundy because last summer 2024, a private investigator named Jason Jensen of the Missing Coalition out of Utah actually planned to search for these missing victims of Ted Bundy. And so I want to tell you that story today. Let's head out into the morbid outdoors. Most Utahns are enjoying their summer by enjoying sun on the beaches of Bear Lake, hiking in the Wasatch Mountains, or flying somewhere exotic for family vacation. But this past summer, private investigator Jason Jensen tackled something else. He searched for Ted Bundy's missing Utah victims. Jensen is a Utah-based private investigator, and he actually runs a nonprofit. And this past summer, he set out with his cadaver dog to search for the following women who have never been found: Debra Kent, Nancy Wilcox, Julie Cunningham, and Susan Curtis. Okay, so I think we all know who Ted Bundy is, and I'm not going to get into his absolutely vile acts. I'm not going to get into them a lot, but I do need to talk with them a little bit about his time in Utah. So if you're unfamiliar with Ted Bundy, he was a serial killer who kidnapped, raped, and murdered dozens of young women and girls during the 1970s and possibly earlier. Bundy typically simulated having a physical impairment, such as an injury, to convince his target that he was in need of assistance, or he would actually dupe the woman into thinking that he was an authority figure like a police officer. He frequently revisited the bodies of those he abducted, and what he did was absolutely vile. He groomed and performed sex acts on the corpses until their decomposition and destruction by wild animals made these further interactions impossible. And that's one thing that I did not know about Ted Bundy. I didn't know he did that until I started researching for this episode. He decapitated at least 12 of his victims, and he kept their severed heads as mementos in his apartment. And on a few occasions, he broke into homes at night and bludgeoned, maimed, strangled, and/or sexually assaulted his victims in their sleep. After more than a decade of denials, he did confess to 30 murders committed in 7 states between 1974 and 1978. His true victim count is actually unknown. In August 1974, Bundy received a second acceptance from the University of Utah Law School and then moved to Salt Lake City, Utah. After his arrival, multiple young girls and women started to turn up murdered or go missing. So first, I'm just going to discuss some of his crimes in the state, and then we'll talk about the specific victims and where the searches were done for their remains. On October 2nd, he abducted 16-year-old Nancy Wilcox in Holiday, Utah. On October 18th, Melissa Ann Smith, a 17-year-old daughter of the police chief of Midvale, which is like another Salt Lake City suburb, she disappeared after leaving a pizza parlor around 9:30. Her nude body was found in nearby mountainous area 9 days later, and postmortem examination indicated that she may have remained alive for up to 7 days following her disappearance. On October 31st, Laura Ann Amy, also 17, disappeared 25 miles south of Lehi after leaving a Halloween party by herself just after midnight. She was actually last seen trying to hitchhike back home. Her naked body was found by hikers 9 miles to the northeast in American Fork Canyon on Thanksgiving Day. The medical examiner estimated that Laura had died on November 20th, 20 days after her disappearance. Years later, Bundy described his post-mortem rituals with the corpses of Smith and Amy, including hair shampooing and application of makeup. On November 8th, Bundy approached 18-year-old telephone operator Carol DeRanch at Fashion Place Mall in Murray, which was less than a mile from the Midvale restaurant where Smith was last seen. Now, in this interaction, he pretended to be a police officer to abduct her, and she was actually able to escape. Now, unfortunately, later that evening, Debra Kent, a 17-year-old student at Viewmont High School in Bountiful, which is 20 miles north of Murray, she disappeared after leaving a theater production at school to pick up her brother. Bundy's name was added to their list of suspects, but at the time, no credible forensic evidence linked him to these Utah crimes. So his name was actually added to the list because his ex-girlfriend, who was from Ogden, Utah, tipped the police off that this could possibly be the man responsible for these crimes. In 1975, Bundy shifted much of his criminal activity eastward from his base in Utah to Colorado. And on June 28th, 15-year-old Susan Curtis vanished from the campus of Brigham Young University in Provo, which is 45 miles south of Salt Lake City. Her murder became Bundy's last confession, tape recorded moments before he entered the execution chamber. The bodies of the victims, Wilcox, Kent, Cunningham, Alverson, Culver, and Curtis, have never been recovered. In August 1975, Bundy was baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, although he was not an active participant in services and actually ignored most church restrictions. He would then be later excommunicated by the LDS Church following his 1976 kidnapping conviction. When asked his religious preference after his arrest, Bundy answered Methodist, which was the religion of his childhood. If you're unfamiliar with how Bundy got caught, it was because he was actually arrested by a Utah Highway Patrol officer named Bob Hayward in a Salt Lake suburb. Now, Hayward had seen Bundy cruising a residential area, most likely scoping out for his next victim. He noticed that Bundy's front passenger seat had been removed and placed on the rear seats, and this is why he searched the car. Now, in Bundy's car, he found a ski mask, a second mask fashioned from pantyhose, a crowbar, handcuffs, trash bags, a coil of rope, an ice pick, and other items initially assumed to be burglary tools. Now, Bundy tried to smooth talk his way out of this, and he said the ski mask was for skiing, he had found the handcuffs in a dumpster, and that the rest were just common household items. But this officer remembered that this man's name was reported, and so he arrested him. Police found several items in his apartment that pertained to the missing teens in Utah and Colorado. In September, Bundy sold his Volkswagen Beetle to a Midvale teenager. Utah police impounded it, and FBI techs dismantled and searched it, and they found DNA evidence that linked Bundy to an earlier murder. Before his execution, Bundy confessed to detectives from Idaho, Utah, and Colorado that he had committed numerous additional homicides, including several that were unknown to police. He then explained that when he was in Utah, he could bring his victims back to his apartment where he could reenact scenarios depicted on the covers of detective magazines. And that's a direct quote from Bundy. Ted Bundy claimed 8 victims in Utah during his time here, 8 that we know of anyways. Today, we're going to focus on 4 cases in which Jason Jensen, the private detective based out of Salt Lake, those women that he spent last summer searching for. Now, the reason why Jason chose these cases to go look into and search for these women is because Bundy revealed more information about these 4 prior to his death. So he claimed that other victims, he threw them in rivers or elsewhere where they'll likely never be discovered. But these 4 women, he described where he left their remains. First, we're going to talk about Nancy Wilcox. Nancy was 16 years old when she went missing on October 2nd, 1974, from Holiday, Utah. If you're unfamiliar with Utah, Holiday is a suburb of Salt Lake City, and I actually have family who lives in Holiday, and I have a nephew that attends the same high school that Nancy attended high school at. Nancy was a junior at Olympus High School and was a member of the cheerleading team. Nancy left school to buy a pack of gum, and she never returned back to school. She was last seen riding in a Volkswagen Bug, similar to Ted Bundy's. And of course, authorities initially classified Nancy as a runaway, but Nancy was only the first among many girls that would later go missing from Utah during this time period. Before his execution, Bundy confessed that he abducted her at knife point, sexually assaulted her in a nearby orchard, and strangled her. He said he buried her body near Capitol Reef National Park, which was over 200 miles from the site of her disappearance. Her remains have never been found. Nancy was 16 years old when she disappeared, and she would be 65 years old now. She was last seen in a brand new coat, a size 9 dress, size 6.5 shoes, or a blouse and blue corduroy pants. Nancy has blonde, brown hair, brown eyes, and her ears are pierced. I think this just goes to show that this is a large reason why Ted Bundy wasn't caught sooner, because he would abduct people, women, girls, from certain areas and then drive, like I just said, over 200 miles to dispose of their bodies. He could have, you can be in another state if you really wanted to do that, but he chose near Capitol Reef National Park for her final resting place, which is, I don't know, it's beautiful out there, but it's also so devastating that her family still has never found her remains. And I haven't spent a lot of time around Capitol Reef National Park, but I've seen pictures, and I imagine that searching for a body in that area would be so incredibly hard. Next, we're going to discuss Debra Kent. Debra went missing on November 8th, 1974 from Bountiful, Utah. Bountiful is just 12 miles north of Salt Lake City, and my father-in-law actually grew up in Bountiful. Debra was just 17 years old when she vanished from Viewmont High School. She was attending a play with her parents when she left during intermission to pick up her brother at an ice skating rink. But Debra never arrived to the family car, which triggered an immediate concern. According to witnesses, there was a loud screaming coming from the parking lot of the school around the time that Debra was last seen. One person saw a light-colored Volkswagen Bug speeding away from the school. After her parents realized that she had never left the school, they found a handcuff key sitting by the car. This, along with the car seen driving away from the school, would be connected to Ted Bundy. 36 hours before his execution, Bundy confessed to her abduction, admitting to keeping her at his residence for about 24 hours before her death. A 1989 article from the Associated Press stated that numerous searches over several months at 3 locations in central Utah netted hundreds of animal bones, but only a single human patella, and a patella is a kneecap. It was among 10 bags of bones collected by searchers in early May near a road leading into Fairview Canyon, where Bundy had told police to look. Although only her patella was recovered, DNA testing in 2015 did confirm her identity, providing an answer to her family after 41 years. Debra was 17 years old when she went missing, and she would be 67 years old today. So this is a case where they did connect it to Ted Bundy, and he told police, hey, look in this area, Fairview Canyon in south central Utah, but the only thing they were able to find of Debra's was her kneecap. And I'm just so glad that her family got some sort of answers before Ted Bundy was executed. Next, we have Susan Curtis. Now, Susan was 15 years old when she went missing. She was last seen in Provo, Utah, while attending the Bountiful Orchard Youth Conference at Brigham Young University when she disappeared on June 27, 1975. That evening, following a formal banquet at the Wilkinson Student Center, she left her friends to walk back to her dormitory and brush her teeth. Now, this distance was about a quarter of a mile, and authorities don't believe that Susan ever arrived at her dorm because when they checked her toothbrush, it was dry. Ted Bundy confessed to Susan's murder before his 1989 execution. He stated he buried her body along a highway near Price, Utah, but a search of the site turned up no evidence. Her remains have never been located. Susan was 15 at the time of her disappearance. She would be 65 years old today. Now, the next one, she was not from Utah, but she was one that was discarded outside, and Bundy actually provided a very descriptive location where he left her remains. We are talking about Julie Cunningham. Despite not being a Utah resident, Jason searched for Julie's remains because her case is one included in Bundy's last confessions, and he described where her remains were buried. Julie was last seen in Vail, Colorado on March 15, 1975, and at the time of her disappearance, she worked for a ski shop and part-time as a ski instructor. Julie disappeared early in the evening after she left her apartment in Apollo Park neighborhood to visit a local tavern. She was never heard from again. Julie would be 75 years old today. She was last seen in a brown suede jacket, blue jeans, a ski cap, and boots. Bundy stated he lured Julie into his vehicle by posing as an injured skier on crutches and asking her to help carry his ski boots. Feigning injury was a common technique for him. He then knocked her unconscious, drove her to a remote area about 80 miles west of Vail, and raped her. He stated that Julie regained consciousness at some point and tried to escape, but he caught her. He then strangled her before disposing of her body in a shallow grave near Rifle, Colorado. Bundy said that the gravesite was in a high desert area with a circular drive and some large trees. And weeks later, he actually made the 6-hour drive from Salt Lake City to revisit her remains. So he knew this area well enough, or could remember it well enough, to get back there. Her remains have never been recovered to this day. So why am I bringing you this episode? Well, that's because Jason Jensen actually kicked off last summer with his cadaver dog, Lily, to try and locate these missing women. So, who is Jason Jensen? He actually has decades of experience in law enforcement. He was in the military and served in the Gulf War. He also has degrees in criminal justice and years of experience in working in the legal field as a certified paralegal. He's also a seasoned licensed private investigator with his own agency. And over the years, Jensen has said that his passion for finding missing people has steadily become more than just a hobby, and he has been determined to find Bundy's lost victims to provide some sense of closure for their families. According to Jen Kocher at Cowboy State Daily News, Jason's first search focused on finding Debra Kent, who is said to be buried near Fairview Canyon. Jensen believes that the searchers didn't dig deep enough in the ground to recover the rest of her remains, so he'll be heading east of Fairview for his first search, and he actually did this at the end of June 2024. For his second search, also at the end of June, he actually looked for Nancy Wilcox. Now, the reason why he kind of had these kind of spaced out in terms of weather and the heat, right? Because we're talking a lot of these places are in southern Utah, and when it gets so hot, it's not safe for searchers to look either. So he, again, at the end of June last year, started to look for Nancy Wilcox, which is the woman that Bundy is said to have buried outside Capitol Reef National Park. So apparently, Bundy admitted to hiding her body east of Cove Fort, which is on State Route 24. I don't know if you guys have ever been there. I've driven past kind of this area. Like I said, it's so desolate, and I don't know what point of start that Jason and the crew had, but I'm really hoping that they were able to cover a lot of ground this past summer. The third search was to go to Colorado to look for Julie's remains. And this is the woman that's buried in the high desert north of Rifle. The last search was going to be focusing on Susan Curtis. This is the woman that was supposedly buried near Price, Utah, and he was planning to hit this area mid-July depending on weather. I drive past Price a lot because I also go to Colorado a lot to see friends, and I used to live in West Colorado. So I just can't imagine it would be trying to find a needle in a haystack in these areas. And what I'm thinking is interesting is that all of these areas are known in the local groups for rock hounding or searching for minerals and rocks, and no one's came across any remains that have been reported. And the area around Price is huge for rock hounding. In fact, I just went around Price and rock hounded with a friend last August. A large reason why Jason started searching this past summer is because it was actually the 50th anniversary of Ted Bundy's crime spree, and it kind of just all fell into place. Which, I don't know, Jason believes that new technology and Google Maps can help his team determine the specific locations described by Bundy. And if you think about it, we do have an advantage with Google aerial maps that wasn't available at the time that the searches were initially going on. At the time of this recording, I've tried to look and see if there have been any updates, and you know that we will see if Jason finds remains from Ted Bundy's victims. That would be national headlines. It would be huge because 50 years and we're going to find remains. That would be awesome and amazing for the families. So at the time of this recording, I don't have an update. I do think it's very interesting that one private investigator is setting himself apart from the rest to take on this massive, massive effort. And he's right. Google aerial maps could somehow be useful. I don't know exactly how, but I know that he's got a crew with a lot of people and his cadaver dog Lily, and I have hopes that he will be able to bring some of these women home to their families. Like I said, this wasn't a typical episode. I just wanted to share it because I think it's very interesting, and I don't think many of you, unless you're from or live in Utah, will have heard of this quest last summer in 2024. I hope you guys have a great day. Recreate responsibly, and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, a quick review helps us know what you love about the show. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time.